Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Tunnel Vision, a show brought to you by USCFootball.com. I'm your host, Keely Eure, joined by Shotgun Spratling and Ryan Abraham. I almost said your name wrong, Ryan. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It happens. It's Thursday. We got a fun show for you guys today, previewing USC's first road game. They go to Provo to take on BYU. We'll talk about Keeton Slovis. Is he the real deal? Is a star born for USC's quarterback? And then we'll talk about former USC athletic director Lynn Swann resigned on Monday. He's gone. We'll talk about that. Interim AD Dave Roberts. And as always, you can call in and tell us your thoughts, your questions, your concerns. 512-4-TUNNEL. You can also tweet at us, #TunnelVision. And wherever you're watching this, YouTube Live, Periscope, or Facebook Live, that's the one. You can put your comments, questions, concerns. We'll put them on the screen and answer them. But guys, we got a fun show today. Where do you want to start off first? Basically, Keeton Slovis has been handling the media pretty well. It was a rough media scrum for me. I got elbowed in the ribs, but he got a lot of questions about how he's handling the fame. And from all accounts, coaches and Keeton, sounds like he's handling it pretty well.
It does. I mean, he's the the star in the making, the heir apparent to the Sam Darnold trophies that he was getting, all that stuff. People want to anoint him as the greatest freshman quarterback ever. He had the greatest performance ever for a debut of a freshman quarterback. I like the way he played a lot. I mean, he was really efficient. I thought he made really good decisions with the ball. I think this offensive scheme, though, we talked about this a lot, is just going to be a lot more friendly to quarterbacks. And would JT Daniels have the same kind of numbers? I mean, he looked really good in those first two drives against Fresno State. I think it would have been pretty similar. But what he did, I mean, for a true freshman to step in, 18 years old, played from a small high school, wasn't Elite 11 quarterback, anything like that. I think it's pretty remarkable what we got to see from Keeton Slovis. Now he's going to get his first road test, so we'll see how that goes. And it's probably not going to be a lot of the man coverage, kind of stubborn David Shaw stuff that he was just letting them. USC threw out 4 wide receivers, and he had a lot of guys open. BYU is probably going to drop a bunch of guys back, and we'll see what they do and if he can make the right decisions with more coverage back there.
Much different approach from BYU's defense than Stanford's defense. It's going to be a much different challenge for Keeton Slovis. You're going up against a Stanford defense. There's physicality. Guys getting off the line of scrimmage. That's going to be a concern. The DBs are going to try to play physical, but you can create separation and you can get open guys. And their defense didn't play very well in that game. There were a lot of wide open guys at times too, which is great for USC. That's something we haven't seen in a while.
Scheming guys open, maybe?
What? Crazy. But now he's going to have to make reads, and that's what they did to Jarrett Garantano from Tennessee. He threw a couple of interceptions where guys were dropping in coverage, and he didn't look and see that there was another guy coming. So it's going to be on Keeton Slovis to make the correct reads, go through his progressions when he needs to, and then decide whether the throw or take off. But I think the offensive line is going to play a big part in it. If they can run the ball, then you can potentially get them out of dropping 8. If you can consistently run the ball, which is something that they struggled with in the past, and that was something that was levied against the USC offense last year when teams would drop 8 against JT Daniels at times, and USC's offensive coaches would go, well, we haven't seen that on tape, so we couldn't make an adjustment. No, you just got to run the ball better in those situations. I think that for Keeton Slovis, the key is going to be to not try to do too much again. Same thing in that game. He had great numbers, but it's not like he was trying to make ridiculous throws on every throw. And probably the most impressive one, I said this on Sunday, the most impressive pass to me was like a 7-yard gain to Manir McClain, because he went through a progression on the left, a second progression on the left, and he stepped up in the pocket, he looked at 2 more, and then he threw it to McClain. So he went through 5 reads on the play, which is something you don't see very often for freshman quarterbacks. So that was the most impressive play that he had all day, and it was a 7-yard gain. Not the 3 touchdowns, not the big catches that he had, or the big yardage plays from Drake London or any of those guys. No, it was that one. It was really impressive, that throw to Tyler Vaughns as well, the back shoulder, tippy toe play.
Pretty good, yeah.
Great throw and a great catch. So there's some really nice plays, but I was really impressed by a 7-yard gain.
Yeah.
I think those are the type of plays that he's going to have to be successful on. The ones where you may not look like it's a great highlight at the end of it, but it's going to move the chains, and it's going to show that has developed, just continually develop all season. That's going to be a big thing for him.
Hey, guys, USCfootball.com. Make sure you go there and check out Shotgun's film study because he breaks down plays really well. Him and Keely do a great job of that. So make sure you check it out on USCfootball.com. You got to check out his film study. It's up on the front page right now.
One thing I will say,
stuff by
Keely,
Shotgun.
since you talked about the scrum, it's just like it's like a club. You got to have sharp elbows. You know, anytime you go in a club, you got to make sure.
I was trying.
If anyone comes close, you got to be able to you got to throw the elbows out a little bit. Make sure you protect yourself.
It was like record media that day, right? Like
It was crazy.
because there were some other story we probably got to talk about that was
True. But I will say in my defense, I was like a wide receiver trying to make the catch. I put my arms up to film, and then I was open.
You're exposed.
So I was exposed,
Gotta get her a
exactly.
flak
Catching
jacket.
over the middle, you know,
get
the
the
linebacker
shot, the
cameraman.
kidney shot or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got to get her a flak jacket.
Yeah.
True, yeah. On the other side of the ball, USC's defense had a slow start. Now, field position wasn't their strength just because of USC's special teams, but what do you expect from this USC defense? Zach Wilson kind of poses a dual threat capability. He can scramble, he can be mobile if he wants to be. That's something that we've seen USC struggle with. Jorge Reyna with his scramble yards, that's something that USC's coaches kind of dismissed a little bit, but what do you expect? Because this seems like it could be a bad matchup for USC's defense in that sense.
Yeah, I'd say there's two concerning matchups for me. One, you mentioned it, the scrambling ability of Zach Wilson. He definitely has that ability to get outside. We saw, Jorge Reyna, who doesn't throw the ball all that well, still complete a bunch of passes, not as many passes, but some big yardage passes. But when he got outside the defense, the contain really wasn't there. But Zach Wilson is a much more accurate passer than either of the first two quarterbacks that USC has seen. We've seen situations where guys were wide open for Fresno State or for Stanford, and the quarterback was unable to get them the ball. I think if that happens with BYU's wide receivers, and they got some playmakers there, I think there's a potential for Zach Wilson to hit those passes, and then there's going to be a big play. So two factors. Make sure you contain him on the outside, and don't let guys go wide open because this quarterback probably isn't going to miss as often as the other guys did.
Yeah, let me throw some stats at you to back that up.
Ooh, stats.
Jorge Reyna, I looked at both quarterbacks when they threw more than 3 yards down the field because USC struggled with the screen game, so they picked up some yardage there. But both quarterbacks, Jorge Reyna was 8 of 24 when he threw beyond 3 yards. Davis Mills was 12 of 25 for 148 yards, and he threw an interception. But then I looked at what I call touch throws, or throws that he had to throw over a defender, whether it be on the outside, kind of a jump ball situation, or over the middle, and there was a defender in the way. He was 4 of 14 for 72 yards. So those are throws that an accurate quarterback, and some of those were open. You saw Colby Parkinson wide open. You saw a couple times down the right side that they were able to get, I think, Osiris St. Brown one time and another receiver where they had opportunities, Simi Fuhoku, but they weren't able to connect. So if Zach Wilson is more accurate, now he was super accurate in the bowl game.
Yeah.
I think he set a record now. He's like 17 to 18 or something for BYU. But when I watched the Utah game, I didn't think he was that great.
He's come back down to earth a little bit this year.
Yeah. And so at the Tennessee game, I watched a little bit of that last night, and he wasn't overly impressive. So, there's still that question mark is if a guy can make the throws. Now, what's helping USC's DBs is that they're getting pressure up front. The defensive line is doing a great job of getting some pressure on the quarterback, and the interception that Greg Johnson had. Who was there? Marlon Tuipulotu was right in his face.
There was pressure, right?
So, those things always help the DBs, and that makes, a guy that's open, that shrinks the window. I think if you have 2 yard separation, you have pressure in your face, that changes it to a yard or less. So the DBs can make up some ground because the throw can't be as accurate usually when there's someone in the way. So I think it's key for USC to get some pressure on Wilson and keep him from doing, like you said, don't let him get out of the pocket. Don't go too wide with your pass rushes and then give these big windows to run on. So maybe the game plan changes a bit for the defensive line and how they kind of attack. Do you kind of bring a kind of consistent flow instead of opening it up really wide and then having those lanes that a quarterback can spill out? Maybe they change those things. I'm kind of going to watch and see those type of things, or what I'm going to be watching this game.
Now, one more question before we get into maybe the newsier items of the week. A lot of people have deemed this game against BYU for USC a trap game. First game on the road, hostile environment. Maybe looking ahead to Utah on Friday. That's a key matchup for the Pac-12 South race. But how does USC not make this a trap game? And how do you think this team will react? We've seen them react well, down 17-3. Do they carry that over into this next week?
It's a trap. We love the Admiral Akbar memes. Get them out there. Oh, hit the likes on them wherever you're watching. Make sure you like us and stuff. Well, we got to throw in the plug for that. Yeah, I mean, the fact that Clay Helton brought it up, certainly You address it. We knew those players were so sky high after the Stanford win. Down 17-3, and the 14-3. Forcing the field goal was such a huge play. I think the defense rallied around the offense rallied around the defense. Everyone just seemed to gel. It was something. It was a thing of beauty to watch that team really bond and come together. But you have to bounce back right away. We haven't seen a lot of that. I put up our false positive story. I don't know if you guys got to see it, but on USCFootball.com. Whenever USC plays Stanford, it doesn't always tell the story for the rest of the season. So I think you have to buck that trend and make sure you go out and say, hey, this is a really important game. This is a team that just beat a Power 5 conference on the road. They got a brutal schedule. They've already played Utah. They're playing Washington next. They've circled this USC game, and BYU is going to be ready. Lavelle Edwards Stadium is going to be rocking. It's an afternoon game, but they are going to be ready for USC. So I don't think you can overlook that. And if you come out and don't play very well at the beginning, you have to be able to kind of bounce back like we saw against Stanford. But I think it's going to be different doing that on the road as opposed to home. So I don't think you can afford a slow start. Now, BYU has only scored 9 first-half points all season. So they've been kind of a slow start team too. So you definitely don't want to let BYU jump on you. They haven't done that so far this season.
I think USC needs to take advantage of that, the slow starts that BYU's had. And if they can jump out and put 14 points up quickly or 17, 21 points in the first quarter, early in the second quarter, I think that puts a lot of pressure on that BYU team to come out of some of the things that they want to do, the drop 8 and different things, because USC can then run the ball and start eating away at the clock. You may start seeing BYU try to do different things if USC can get an early lead. But that's the key is you got to capitalize too. Tennessee didn't capitalize. No. They had some opportunities early. Tennessee really ran the ball.
That was a miracle too. That was a miracle comeback basically.
That was Tennessee football.
Yeah.
But Tennessee ran the ball really well to the edges. I think USC has an opportunity to do that as well. It's a different type of run in the air raid offense, but I still think that they can get on the edges. And, the guys they have on, especially the left side with Austin Jackson, Elijah Vera Tucker, can get out there and create some holes. And if you're able to run the ball, that just makes everything a lot easier on Keeton Slovis. You're going to force them to come out of some drop it. You're going to force them to bring more guys up to the line of scrimmage and open up some one-on-one opportunities.
Yep.
Now, moving on to the newsy items. First up, Devin Williams, the sophomore wide receiver, announced on Wednesday that he's entering the NCAA transfer portal. He was at practice on Tuesday, was not there on Wednesday. Clay Helton had a short statement about it on Thursday, basically saying he's a great kid. I wish him the best. No real details about that. What did you guys take away from that? It was a little shocking in the sense that it's week 3. If it's about playing time, you're kind of sacrificing more playing time by entering the transfer portal at this point of the season.
Yeah, you want good news after a good win, and there was I guess you could say a couple of we'll talk about one of the some bad news I guess that was happening, but when things are going poorly, then you're like, oh yeah, this guy's going to the transfer portal. But when things have turned up, you're not really expecting to see a guy that was probably the number 4 wide receiver on the team to be entering the transfer portal. So it was a little shocking to me. I thought he would get a lot more run. Now, he didn't get much in the first game, 1 catch in the second game. I think you said he had 10 plays in the second game, so didn't get a whole lot of run. And we thought we would see a much deeper rotation for these wide receivers, which so far they did a little bit more in the Stanford game than Fresno State, but just hasn't been that same kind of throw a whole bunch of guys out there on different plays.
It really was. I called it a faux rotation. I'm going to have a little bit more about this on the site tomorrow in my participation notes, but I'm calling it a faux rotation because they gave him 1 drive, basically, which they were successful. Devin Williams, Velus Jones, and Munir McClain all had some of the highest yards per play average for the offensive players because their drive went down, and I think it was 6 plays, and they scored a 70-something yard drive. So they were doing well when they were in there. Devin Williams, the only other time he was in the game, he came in 1 play when Michael Pittman Jr. Basically did the splits near the sideline, and the trainer basically forced him out of the game because Pittman was kind of irate that he was being pulled out of the game at that time. And that tells you that's why some of these guys aren't getting extra chances because the guys that are in front of them
don't want to come out.
They're really good, and especially in a tempo that you have in the Stanford game. USC ran less plays than Stanford did. They had 61 plays. They're talking about on the broadcast they're going to run 90, 100 plays. I'm like, you're not doing that against Stanford.
Not against Stanford, yeah.
That ain't happening. There's just not an opportunity to do that. Maybe they'll see that in the future, but they haven't run a ton of plays so far. So maybe we'll see it pick up in the BYU game or the next few games. Like Utah wants to run a little bit of tempo too. That might be a high, an 80, 90, 100 play game for, on both sides of the ball. So those are when the rotations are going to be important. So leaving right after the Stanford game, if it's just for playing time, then that wouldn't make much sense, which makes me think there's probably a little bit more to this story than just the playing time. But Devin Williams had to prove himself. I mean, he was behind Michael Pittman Jr., which means Michael Pittman Jr. is gone after the season. Then he's the heir apparent to take over that position. So, why do you leave now if it's about that? I think there's a little bit more here, and he just wasn't happy being at USC apparently.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely see if that story develops. But now to the big story of the week. On Monday, Lynn Swann resigned. It was announced by President Carol Folt that he was resigning. Ryan, you always put resigning in quotes whenever you tweet about it, just essentially because it didn't seem like much of a resignation. It was more like a nice kind of exit, giving him his dignity since he is a USC alum and whatnot. But Ryan, take your takeaways from that. Looking forward, what's the timeline for a new AD? What does this mean for Clay Helton? A lot of questions were spurred out of that dramatic exit by Swann.
Yeah, no, it needed to be done. And, the fact that he did not have any part of that statement from Carol Folt, then, it wasn't coming from Lynn Swann. Bruce Feldman, we had him on. You haven't listened to it yet. We had him on an emergency podcast. We did an emergency podcast this week because, big news, the athletic director. I think there was an over-under of emergency podcast, like 1.5. We've already got one and hasn't even lost a football game yet. So there's more coming. But to what Bruce had to say, USC had reached out to other candidates to become the AD over the last couple of weeks. This was in the works. And we weren't sure what the timing was going to be. But when he came on our live show back in June, he basically said he's not going to be the athletic director later than October. So happened earlier than that after a big win, which is a little surprising with the timing, but it's something that needed to be done. All the turmoil, the absolute dysfunction that's going on in the USC athletic department, they needed to come in and bring somebody new in. There's a new search committee. It seems like Carol Folt has really grabbed the bull by the horns here and just really taking control of this. She said that she wants someone with experience. That means likely not another football player that's never been an athletic director before. That's a big part of this. You need someone that's actually done the job before. Stop bringing in figureheads who have never been a college administrator. So I think that's the most important thing. Preferably no one with ties to USC. There's some names out there with that do have ties, and that's just the way USC has hired in the past. There's like this nepotism thing going on. My gut feeling is that Carol Folt's not going to go that direction. She was asked, I think, by the LA Times if USC ties were important. She said that definitely wasn't necessary. I kind of think you almost want to go away from anyone that has USC ties. Just go out and bring someone in who's a good athletic director somewhere else at a big athletic program that, you're talking about a $120 million budget you got to oversee. Bring that person in and let them run USC. They're going to come in and go, wow, there's a lot of things I need to fix, or he or she will need to say, there's a lot of things that need to be fixed in this department, and that's what USC needs to do.
Yeah, the calling a resignation is very kind to Lynn Swann, because Carol Folt later told the LA Times, they talked to her. She said he felt that this was the professional thing to do, to resign and allow me to build my team. To allow me to build my team.
Yeah.
Lynn Swann just said 6 months or less than 6 months ago that he planned to be here for at least 7 more years because he wanted to do it for 10 years. I don't think he suddenly changed his mind on that. Lynn Swann's not that type of person. So,
no.
So that's being very kind to him to do the resignation. But yeah, I agree with you. I think you got to go outside of the current staff. I think you have to just go get some new blood, shake some things up. That's what you're doing with Carol Folt. I don't think she has no ties to anyone that we know of in the athletic department to begin with. So why would she suddenly decide that that's her person that she wants to pick? I'm sure she's looking at some of the people she's worked with before, whether it's at Michigan, the AD at Michigan State, or some people she's worked with in North Carolina or other places. I'm sure she's reaching out to her own people while they do a search committee. There's always a search committee, which I don't know why they even use these terms. And, the whole thing with the Helton hiring, they were going to get this whole search firm to look it up, and all you had to do was go knock on his door and say, you want the job?
They did that for Lynn Swann. Like, they had a search committee. It's like
the search committee would have never come back with Lynn Swann's the best person.
You would be fired if you were the search committee and they come back with Lynn Swann. Like, that is absolutely ridiculous. Like, this guy that hasn't been around the USC program for a long time, basically been living in his basement in Western Pennsylvania, and let's bring him in. He'll be a great athletic director. Like, no search committee would ever do that.
Someone wanted to know, what would the NCAA do if USC wanted to hire Reggie Bush as their athletic?
That's the one USC former football player I would say okay with. Like, bring him back. Like, no one else. If you want to hire Reggie Bush as the AD, I will sign off. I will never say another bad word about USC hiring football players if you get Reggie Bush. I'm good with that.
That wouldn't be a good hire, but it would just be to kick dirt in the NCAA's face.
Stick it to them on.
Exactly. I would be behind that one 100%. That's the exception to my rule.
Now, Clay Helton was asked how this directly impacts him, and he said basically it's winning games, and that's what we're doing, and that's what we want to continue to do. But, Lynn Swann was essentially the safety blanket for Helton. It's essentially why he came back after a 5-7 season. What does this do for Clay Helton's future? Do we necessarily know that yet? Does whoever comes in as an AD have to decide where they feel about Clay Helton when they come in?
Yeah, I don't think we know yet. We'll have to see who gets hired. But when I talked to Bruce earlier this week, he had an interesting statement, and I thought this made a lot of sense. Is that right now you had a program that was it was kind of in limbo, where with Clay Helton it was sort of like, is he on life support? Is he going to be around next year? And every question I got, every interview, everyone's talking about what is it going to take to get Clay Helton fired or retained. And even say the team goes 9-3 but doesn't win the Pac-12. It's like, well, that's a pretty good record. Is that enough to come back? And Bruce's point was you have to kind of look 5 years from now and say, is this the guy you think can take you to the next level and win a national championship? And if you can't say that, then you have to move on and get somebody else. And I think that's the question for whoever the new athletic director is. He even said, like, if the team goes 10-2 and doesn't make the college football playoff, he could see a scenario where Clay Helton was fired. And I think that's, I didn't really think about it before, but that's somewhat realistic because it depends on who comes in. You want to see, hey, is this the guy that's going to bring us to the promised land? And if you don't feel that, then you have to make a change. Even if a guy goes 10-2, which seems absolutely mind-blowing, but following the 5-7 season, followed up with 10-2, and it's just not that powerful of a conference right now. USC could make a crazy run because I think the Pac-12 is a little bit down, but that's kind of what Bruce's thoughts, and I agree with him.
Yeah, it's the same thing we've talked about when they bring new coaches in. Is the players now have to impress a new boss?
Yeah.
Basically, Clay Helton will have to impress a new boss. Whenever they make the hire, and that can be on his wins and losses. It can be on the off the field stuff. It can be on the number of transfers they've had in the program. It could be on his community work and the stuff and the fact that everyone thinks he's a great person. All those factors will go into it, but it's all about impressing that person that's above you, the one that controls your fate of the job.
Yeah.
Before we move on to our callers, we had a Facebook question from James who said, why wouldn't Steve Lopes get a shot finally? He's someone who's been in the athletic department for decades at this point. Ryan, does that signal that maybe there might be more changes coming soon?
I think it does. The fact that he wasn't named the interim athletic director, and that's the thing, he has been there for decades, and people thought he was going to get the job before. I mean, I think it would have been better to hire Steve Lopes than bring in either Pat Hayden or Lynn Swann. They didn't go that way. But then it becomes a factor that, well, you have been around, you have been there for a long time. And it's unfortunate for him. He's been the number 2 guy with kind of these figurehead people going in there. And I think now it's sort of like you have to bring in new blood. He might still be around. I'm not sure. But the fact that he wasn't named the interim, I think that's some sort of statement where they bring in someone from the outside who's been around USC before. But, to me, it's probably going to be some sort of outside hire. Maybe those guys are retained. There's probably going to be, though, a lot more shakeup, I would think, in the athletic department.
Yep, that's something to look out for going forward. But let's go to our live callers. We have 3 right now. First up,
wow.
Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, guys, it's Mike from Texas. I got 2 questions. So with Keeton Slovis playing like he did against Stanford and hopefully playing like he's going to play, that we hope that he plays, and JT Daniels redshirting this year, do you think that's going to affect Bryce Young's commitment? And what the heck is going on with Brew McCoy?
All right. Bryce Young.
You can answer this question. I'm not getting into it.
Shaka was trying to talk to it. They're not going to say anything from that camp. There's been a lot of Bama talk. I did an Alabama radio show, and that was like the first thing they wanted to ask me about is Bryce Young. So I think that's still a wait and see sort of thing. I mean, that's a long ways off, but right now he's still a USC commit. For Brew McCoy, I have no idea. There's people keep asking about. I don't know why people are worried. Like, he's not going to be playing this year. If he's sick, whatever, it's going to be fine. I don't think he's transferring again. Before that would be kind of
technically he could still play this year. The
yeah.
NCAA waiver.
The waiver hasn't come back.
Through.
He's sick. It's like I don't think you really need
it's not going. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
Yeah, you have like a guy like Devin Williams like transferring out. Like I don't think you need him right now. It's sort of just better just like redshirt. He's a 5-star. He's in your back pocket. I'm not sure why people are so worried about him, but man, they are.
Because he's really, really good.
He
That's
is really
why.
good. Yeah.
True, but
you can
USC's
use him on
doing
both
well.
sides of the ball. It's not about that. It's just him getting healthy is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
He's been at the games. We've seen him at both of the games. You can tell he's a little bit slimmer than he was previously.
Mm-hmm.
Lost a little bit of the muscle tone that he had. So it's going to be about him just getting healthy and getting back to the shape he was in before. So whatever the illness is, it has taken a toll on him.
Yeah.
Going back to the Bryce Young one, it's a very hypothetical question. I hate hypotheticals to begin with, but because anything can happen. Keaton Slovis can break his leg this next game. Then you go, well, Matt Fink started these games and they went undefeated the rest of the season.
Matt Fink is unbelievable. You're like, okay,
You don't like hypotheticals, and then you go to a drastic hypothetical.
I'm pointing out that anything can happen.
Yeah.
That's my
Yes,
point.
yes.
It's way too early in this situation to figure it out, which is why, like Ryan said, the Bryce Young, the Young family, I think they're just going to take a wait-and-see approach. They like USC. They really love the program. They like Clay Helton. But if you're a 5-star guy, you're going to be looking for the right opportunity, and that's going to be something that's going to be looked at as the season progresses.
Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty, thanks for the call. Let's go to our next caller. Let's go now. Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
Maybe we don't have a caller.
Maybe we don't.
Dun, 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 dun.
Moving on to our next caller then.
It feels like a real show when you have like a missed caller. We haven't
Right?
I don't think we even had one that just no one was there.
I think we did last week. Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey guys, how we doing?
Good.
Doing good.
Good. Calling from Provo, Utah. Just got in a couple hours ago.
Whoa,
The
nice.
game Saturday. So my question is, I got two questions. With Kendon Slovis' first road test, it's gonna be hostile, I think, Saturday. Do you think Harold changes anything up, kind of make it a little bit more simpler? I know he knows his playbook. We don't know, but it's his first road game. I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I feel like they might change it up a little bit. And second of all, what is the update on Christian Reckner? Thank you so much.
Do you want to do the Rector one
Sure.
first, Keely?
Yeah.
or-
So Helton in his Thursday presser officially labeled Christian Rector as a game time decision. He was in full pads on Tuesday, but looked like he did mostly rehab stuff. Wasn't dressed out on Wednesday. I did see him walking around after Wednesday's practice. He actually was on a scooter and looked like he was moving around pretty well. So I'm not sure if this is just veteran rest, and then they're gonna have him be ready for Saturday's game. But he was officially listed as a game time decision. So it was Marquis Step. So just FYI. But second part of the question, Ryan.
Yeah, well, good. I mean, the good news is they did rotate a lot of guys on the defensive line
True.
if he's not able to go. So we'll see, you might see a little more of Connor Murphy and stuff. But I think I don't think you can simplify the playbook much more because it's pretty simple already. They might run the football more than you normally would, especially this is a BYU defensive front that has been good, I think, the last couple of years. They've been pretty bad the first two games. They've given up a lot of yards on the ground. So you might see more run game or incorporated early to sort of like take charge of things, and so you don't get in a hole, and then maybe you let Slovis air it out a little bit more. We'll see. But I mean, the fact that he could come out and throw it like he did against Stanford, I don't think they're going to be holding much back.
USC's first 3 plays from scrimmage, they went 5 wide, they went 4 wide, and then they went 4 wide, and they motioned the running back out on a short motion. So that immediately told you their confidence level in Slovis and whether they were going to tone down the offense
Yeah.
and try to do anything different. No, they spread things out more. They gave him more flexibility. The 4th and 1, they throw the ball this time instead of trying to run it. So I think they just have enough confidence in him and the offense as a whole that the confidence in him that he'll make the right decision, but the offense as a whole that it'll open things up, that he doesn't have to do too much. If you can run the ball, that definitely helps him out just because that's going to change the coverages you face. But I think that the offense isn't going to change. I mean, Graham Harrell said a while back that the game plan changes each week based on opponent, but not based on personnel.
Yeah.
So whether it was JT Daniels or Keaton Slovis, or if Matt Fink comes in, he's going to run the same type of the game plan is going to be pretty much the same.
Thank you for the call. We always appreciate the live callers. Let's get into our questions. We have a lot of them coming
Yeah.
in. First up, Joey asked about Kyle Ford. We've had a lot of Kyle Ford questions. He was actually cleared to play, I believe, last week. He's doing individual drills. I did see a highlight on his Instagram that he did do some one-on-ones with a DB, making good cuts. But Helton did say today on Thursday that basically we'll see Kyle Ford probably in November. So that's something that he still has
Cleared to practice, not
Yes,
play.
sorry,
Yeah,
cleared to
that's okay,
practice.
yeah.
That's what I meant.
It's
So
still a month and a half, 6 weeks away. That's
Yeah,
a long
yeah.
time away. So
yeah, so November is probably when he might see some game action. But still, there's receivers that will be ahead of him.
Yeah, but he could play in 4 games and still redshirt. So it doesn't look like he's not going to play till November. He'll redshirt like no matter what.
Yeah.
But maybe get some action where you get to see a little bit of it.
And that timeline might change, as much depending on if there's other injuries and stuff. If they're going to take it really slowly, but they might try to push him a little bit more if suddenly you're down to 5 receivers or something.
Yeah, that's true.
One Blue Love on YouTube said, "What kind of defense does BYU run?" And he said, "Tell us, oh shotgun."
They've run a lot of, watching the BYU game at least, they've run a lot of 3-man fronts.
Game?
Tennessee, what I say?
BYU game.
Yeah, the BYU versus Tennessee game. They ran a lot of 3-man fronts on that. I don't recall what the defenses were in the Utah game.
There was some zero coverage stuff I think they did, but a lot of guys dropped into zone coverages and things.
There were a lot of zone coverages, and Chad K was talking to Chris Trevino about how they're going to use some different blitz packages, which a lot of times that comes from zone coverages and bringing a guy from a second or third level that you're trying to confuse the quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they're going to try to do. Those are the more things. It's not going to be. I don't think you'll see a similar defensive alignment as you saw with Stanford, where it was man coverages. They were trying to not give away their pre-snap reads as much, which left them out of position at times, but they were just trying to, be able to run a linebacker out there quickly rather than having him motion out so that they could see whether it was man coverage or not. But they ran a lot of man coverage, Stanford did. I think you're going to see a lot more zone from BYU, which is why I think it's a much different challenge for Keeton Slovis. So if he does really well in this game, then I'm going to have a lot more confidence in him going through the rest of the season, because I think it's the two sides of the coin. Can you be really good against man and zone? You got to be able to do both as a quarterback.
Yeah, like that 4th and 1 play to Michael Pittman, you're throwing that little slant. Well, if there's a linebacker sitting there, you don't see him. It's a pick six going the other way. So you got to make sure you pick up all the defenders, because there's going to be guys dropping into the zones that maybe you don't expect.
And on that play in particular, USC tried to do something to help him out by sending the running back in motion. You're trying to mess with the defense and trying to see what they're doing at the same time. So a lot of times in offenses, you'll send a guy in motion, and if someone goes with him, you usually know it's a man coverage.
Yeah.
So they sent Stephen Carr in motion on that play. So you now take away your potential of a run threat, though, on 4th and 1. There's no run possibility there. You're not going to run Slovis on 4th and 1. But so they know it's a pass, but you're also trying to see what the defense is doing on the other side.
We have a question from Jasper Smith, who says, of the backup O-linemen, which of any of them will get some reps in games besides Andrew Voorhees?
Jasper, he must be new. I haven't heard that name before.
I've never heard that.
Is he a new guy on YouTube? Thanks for being a new watcher, Jasper.
So far, we've only seen Andrew Voorhees, at the right guard spots. That's the only difference we've seen so far. I mean, even when they went to the backups at the end, and they went to Matt Fink and Marquise Stepp and the freshman wide receivers, it was still the starting offensive lineman. So I don't think they trust anyone but beyond that 6 right now. The next guy in line is probably Liam Jimmons.
I was going to say, which is interesting that he could jump up that, to number 7 after being on the defensive line.
Yeah, he was on the defensive line last year, but he's also been banged up. He wasn't in pads on Wednesday when we saw them at practice. The other guy that so Liam Jimmons has been on some special teams. The only other real offensive lineman that's been on special teams was Jacob Daniel was in instead of Andrew Voorhees on the kick block units this game. So I would guess that he's probably the 8th guy out there as well. So he's a veteran guy. He's a guy you would love to see in there and get in there and maul somebody just because you've seen his career. He's another guy that was a defense tackle and moved to the offensive line as well.
Another interesting question from Jasper. He says, after 2 games, would you say that the O-line or the DBs have impressed more, considering they both were the weak links coming into the season?
I like that question.
I know my answer. What's yours?
I'm gonna say the offensive line, because I think the DBs they've made some plays, but I don't think they've been tested by a really good quarterback yet. So I'm gonna pump the brakes a little bit on the secondary. I like what they've been doing. Elijah Griffin's played great, but I'll go with the offensive line.
Yeah, I think it's definitely the offensive line. I mean, that was a big question mark coming in. They've opened up some holes, especially down in the red zone. That was probably the biggest concern. When you get in the red zone, are you going to be able to run the ball and then finish off drives, or are you going to have to settle for field goals? Because we saw in the fall showcase, they struggled in those short yardage situations. Now, they gave up. They didn't get the 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 against Fresno State, but every other opportunity, they pretty much have been able to pick up the yardage needed there.
Yeah, and it helps that Stephen Carr and Vavai Malapai can, do things. Stephen Carr is making guys miss all the time. So,
someone asked, will Stephen Carr get more touches?
You have a spider on your headset.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I should
You just dropped on your shirt there.
Oh, gosh.
Just a little guy.
Well,
welcome to the show, guys.
Welcome to the show. Where
I wasn't
can
sure
happen.
how big the spider was, but That's a clip we should have. I want to watch this. Yeah. He's like looking at me.
Anyway,
like,
I'm going to tell my answer now. I would have to go with the offensive line as well. I think I said on the last television, I don't think this DB group has been tested by an elite passer yet, so I'm curious to see that and how that goes. I do think OG, though, has definitely stepped up. He's a guy who we were questioning about, but he proved his worth in that Stanford game. Ryan, did you see the playback of your...
I did. That was cool, yeah. I don't think I freaked out too much, so that's bad. You know.
OG was terrific in that game. I mean, he had 4 pass breakups. They challenged multiple times because he's the smaller of the DBs, but with him and Isaac Taylor-Stewart when they were both in the game early. So they were trying to test them with their big, what they do well. What they've done well for, 5, 6, 7 years is throw the ball up to big guys and have big guys make plays. Well, OG showed he can get up. And he knocked some passes away that were intended for both Colby Parkinson and Simi Vahoku. So I thought he was fantastic in that game. And like I said, I think I love the way he comes up in the run game as well. He's willing to come up and be a tackler and throw his body in there, even though he had the double shoulder surgeries. He's playing with no fear. Isaiah Pulamao's playing with no fear. Talanoa. Those guys are playing really well right now, but definitely still on the offensive line.
OG gives up, 7 inches and 75 pounds?
Yeah.
I mean, to Colby Parkinson, that's pretty good that he was going toe-for-toe with him.
Yep. Someone called Shotgun out for not helping you with the spider. He just watched you suffer there.
Yeah.
I don't kill spiders, actually. Spiders kill all the other bugs, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Daddy Longlegs. That's the one that are the good ones, apparently. Anyway, moving on.
As long as it wasn't a tarantula or something. Like, oh, that's bad. But he was looking over here. I'm like, what the heck's he looking at?
We had a question from John Laub who said, do you think the running backs will get more touches this game? We kind of already talked about it. Someone else asked, do you think Stephen Carr will get more carries in this game?
He's the one guy. I know a lot of people were clamoring for Marquise Stepp. I have a hard time clamoring for Marquise Stepp to get more plays. Now, when he came in, he looked like a man out there, especially the first run. Because not only, he's not just running through tackles, which he did on his second run. He ran over a guy in the hole and then took 5 guys to get him down, which we knew that he could do. But the first run that Marquise Stepp had, he goes to the right, and first off, they do something completely different. They go in the pistol with Matt Fink and Marquise Stepp, which they have not done at all this season.
Yeah, it's all been shotgun, right? It's all shotgun.
And then they ran a power play where they pulled Elijah Vera Tucker and let him get out in front and do what he does, and he's mauling guys out there. But he breaks an arm tackle on the outside linebacker. Then he breaks the angle of a safety, runs right by the angle. And then a corner comes over, and he just slings him out of the way. I mean, literally slings the guy across out of bounds. And then he's starting to get tackled. He still picks up 4 or 5 more yards. And I go, you look back at the game, and particularly this play because it was on the sideline where I was shooting, so I couldn't see because a lot of bodies got in the way.
Yeah.
We see the replay again and go, oh, my goodness. But I still have a hard time saying, hey, he's got to get more touches because Stephen Carr has been so electric, and you're not getting him too many touches.
Yeah.
I don't know who you take touches away from there. Do you take it away from your wide receivers? That's where you have to take it away from. It's just that the running backs aren't getting a ton of touches right now, but that's also the game plan that the Stanford game was. You only had 61 plays. You went 4 wides, I think 47 of those snaps. So, you're 75% of the time you're going to be in 4 wides. You're not going to run as much when you have the tight end, the H-back in there, Eric Cromanhook, who looked really good in that Fresno State game. And there was another question just recently, is a tight end going to get a reception in this game? I think that
it's been one shuffle pass, right? That's the only tight end reception.
They did try to throw to Josh Follow, on the scramble play.
Yeah.
So I think it's just built based on what the defense is giving them is what they're going to take. And how can you not like that? I know it's hard to just say this guy's got to get more opportunities.
Throw it to him more. Run this guy more. Yeah.
If whatever the defense is giving you take it.
I'm wondering
if you're putting up 500 yards and you put up 45 points on the board. I don't think you should complain about who's getting the ball as much.
I'm wondering if this is a run-heavy game plan, because if they can feel like
it
they
would
run.
make sense.
That would be really interesting to me if it's what, BYU's not as good against the run. We ran the ball down their throat, or we're still going to throw it all over the place. I'm curious to see what it is, but they might run the ball being on the road. We'll see.
We will see. We had a question from Andrew who said, hold on, I'm missing it. Give me a second. He said, hold on, I'm sorry.
We also got a question in similar vein. Do you feel like Michael Pittman Jr. isn't utilized enough? It's just hard to utilize when you have all these weapons, and that's the unique thing about this offense with the air raid is that you got a lot of weapons. You just got to keep everybody happy. Graham Harrell said that I think in the fall, early in the fall. It's that's one of his biggest concerns is can I keep everybody happy? Because we've got a lot of guys that can catch the ball, a lot of guys that can run, a lot of guys that can do special things after they get the ball in their hands.
Yeah.
Got my question now. It's from Andrew, who says, is our main concern linebackers staying disciplined in gap control to limit big runs, or defensive backs in the passing game?
A little bit of both.
Yeah, probably a little both.
I think those are both the biggest issues for both of those units. I think if you want to go to the defensive line, I think is just maintaining their edge responsibilities and tackling when they have an opportunity on the mobile quarterbacks. But that's kind of the big question for each group as you go. I thought the linebackers did a much better job this game. There was the one big run, which was one of the two linebackers. It's hard to tell without knowing the call. But both of them basically split the A-gap and left the A-gap wide open. But besides that run, USC's really controlled the middle.
Yeah.
Any runs up the middle, they haven't really given up anything there. There's been a couple of times with the runs. The misdirection has been a bigger issue.
Yeah.
The diagnosing.
Little over pursuit and stuff.
Yeah, diagnosing what they're doing, not trying to be too overzealous. The same thing with the screenplays that have kind of hounded USC the first couple games is, if you run right by the offensive lineman, unless you're Jay Tufele, because he's been running by some offensive linemen, usually they're throwing a screen pass.
We have a Periscope on real quick.
Really quick, sorry, Andrew.
No.
The same Andrew who asked the question wanted to know if he can get a picture with all three of us in BYU. Ryan will be there. Shock and I will be there. We'll be there pregame. Just yell at us, and we will come over to you. So
Yeah,
there you know.
that'd be cool. Yeah, get a picture with them.
Yeah.
This is LCA Design on Periscope. Hi, Periscope people.
Well done.
What should we be most concerned about with BYU? What do you guys think?
I think the dual threat ability of Zach Wilson.
Yep.
I think that the fact that he can be accurate, that's happened in the past. If that is a big concern, I think, because there's been open receivers at times. There was open receivers against Stanford. Fresno State had some that they just weren't able to connect on. So if he's able to connect when there's open receivers, those are opportunities to move the chains a lot more in this game. And suddenly you're first and goal instead of deciding to try to kick to the field goal, which USC's done a really good job of giving up some yards, but bend but don't break. They forced, I feel like, 8 field goals by now in the first 2 games, or field goal attempts. So I think that's a big concern if they were able to connect on some of those plays in plus yardage.
Yeah.
I think a big one is just going on the road and playing a tough BYU squad that you have a lot of older players that have been on missions. It's a team that's, they're independent, so the schedule's always weird. You're not really sure what to expect, but they could come out there. They go on the road and get a win at Tennessee last week, which, kind of a miracle like we talked about. Last year, they weren't that good of a team. They went on the road and beat a top 5 Wisconsin team.
True.
I mean, this is a team that can come up and bite you, even if you think they're not as good. It's a really tough part of the schedule, like I said. Utah, Tennessee, USC, and Washington to open. That's insane. But they had 3 of those games at home. I think they circled USC. So just some of the intangibles playing this team on the road is not going to be easy.
Yeah, and I think just matching the level, you have such a high win. Do you basically use all the gas in the tank? Can you ramp it up again in a hostile environment? But also what Shotgun said about Zach Wilson, just curious about his mobility, if that's going to be an issue. I talked to Chad Kay about it, and he essentially said we can't get too bogged up by that, because he said you kind of become a prisoner rusher, if that makes sense. He said you kind of just get stuck where you don't want him to escape, but then you don't actually put pressure on him. So he said that's something to watch out for. But that's something that Chad Kay said they have to be optimistic or cautiously aggressive. So they're going to be aggressive, but also just make sure to keep him in the pocket and try and get him there.
And as always with BYU, they have guys that have gone on missions. They're often a more mature team than the teams they play. And the guys that are playing are usually guys that are second or third year football players, which may mean they're 4 or 5 years removed from high school. Even a guy like Tyson Williams, the South Carolina transfer, the running back, he's a guy that did some impressive things, won the game at Tennessee.
Yeah.
He's a guy to watch out for too. But those are just experienced guys on that side. So can you handle their physicality and just they made a lot of mistakes last week, but usually BYU teams are pretty sound teams. They don't usually make a lot of mistakes because they are more mature guys.
Yeah.
Crank 3295 says, when does USC try their first trick play? I say against Washington.
Ooh, first trick play.
That's hard to say. I think it depends on how the game flow is going. I don't think they just want to throw one out there if they're up by 21 or something. So if USC gets out to a good lead against BYU, then there's no need for it there. Utah is a much.
Yeah.
I think because
I think that's the most important one. I think
Yeah.
you would. Yeah.
that you might save something, you might be dialing something, you might be watching their defense for a couple weeks instead of just the week of preparation. They might have been watching them for the first 3 games of the season, going, where can we attack this team with something special?
It could be interesting, or even like early in a BYU game, if you want to try to demoralize them early or something, and
No,
you
I
pull
think
out
you
something.
save it. I think you save it.
Save it, all right.
I mean, we've seen trick plays against Notre Dame. Maybe saving it for that. Not sure. We actually have some live callers if we want to get to
Sure, let's do
those.
that. We got like 15 minutes left.
Okay,
we'll
good
try
to know. Let's go to our first caller. Hello, you are live on Tunnel Vision.
Hey guys, my name's Eric. I'm calling from Nebraska. How you guys doing tonight?
Nice.
Good.
Good, Eric.
Thanks for
calling. Yeah.
Cool guys. I just want to hear if you guys are willing to give your predictions for the game Saturday. And honestly, just want to say you guys do a great job. Keep up the good work and fight on.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Eric.
Eric.
Big 10 country. It used to be Big 12 country, I guess. Nebraska.
True.
We usually save predictions for the end of the show. Though.
Do you want to just do them now, or do you? Want
We can do them now.
Hey, he called in all the way from Nebraska.
It's true. He put some effort in.
That's got to be long distance, I would
I'm
think.
terrible at predictions. I hate predictions because I'm very bad at them, and I don't like being bad at a lot of things. But
You should be used to it, though.
Ooh, spice.
I will fight you to the death if you didn't pay my checks. I think USC scores 28 to 35 points, and I think they win by a couple of touchdowns. I'm waffling back and forth on this. It could be even 28-3. I think the defense could play well, but they usually don't hold teams that little. So maybe it's 28-17 or something, 35-17.
I randomly came up with 28-21 on a radio interview earlier, so I'm like, I'm just going to roll with that. So I think USC covers the spread, wins by a touchdown or so. It's on the road. I'm not sure they're going to put up a ton of points, but they put up 45 last week. I mean, if they can push it up into the 40s again and hold BYU somewhere in the 20s, I think that's a really good sign. But I'm just going to go conservatives, do 28-21.
I'm going to say USC win. I believe I said earlier on a different show, 35-10. That was my gut call. Like I said last time, Graham Harrell's offense hasn't been proven wrong yet, and I can see it being a higher score.
Yeah.
Sometimes the defense, though, is a concern in that sense. So I'm curious. I'm curious to see, like we've been talking about, how Keeton Slovis reacts to more zone coverage, how he reads and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see how the young gun performs. But thank you.
Putting your faith in Graham Harrell's probably smart. Like he's
Hasn't proven wrong yet.
No,
so we'll see. Thank you, Eric, for the call. Let's go to, I believe it is Bill from Orange County. Hello, you're live on television.
Hi, good evening, guys. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hi, good evening, guys. Like the other caller, thank you very much for doing this show. You guys are great. Question is, I know we've talked about this in the past, or you guys have talked about this in the past, but since Swan being gone, I pretty much feel that Helton's faith is basically he's going to get the walking papers with whoever the AD is. But honestly, is there any hope of him? I mean, short of him winning the Pac-12 South, going to the Rose Bowl, we finish 10-2 or 11-1 or whatever it is. Is there any hope of him being retained besides that type of season going into next season?
Thanks for the call.
Thank you.
We covered this already earlier on, but yeah, we feel like that if he makes a run and this team looks like they could, the Pac-12 is not that strong. Yeah, but it certainly depends on who the athletic director is. Talking to Bruce Feldman, like mentioned, seems like the bar is raised a little bit. I don't think it's going to make it easier on Clay Helton, that maybe an 8-4 or a 9-3 that maybe people felt that would be a reason to bring him back isn't a reason anymore. But who knows? If you would have said last year 5-7, is he coming back? You'd say there's no way he would come back, and he came back. So we just don't know. Without an athletic director, it's really hard to say.
It all depends on who is doing the hiring/firing. Who's the athletic director? Who makes that decision of whether or not Clay Helton stays or not? If Clay Helton's dad becomes the athletic director, then he can go.
Kim Helton's probably going to
3-9, and I think Kim Helton would still say he's going to do fine. We just don't know what the connections will be between Helton and a possible AD, if there's anything there, or what the AD is looking for in the position. Those things we just don't know yet until we see a hire.
Yeah.
Warren on YouTube, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Warren on YouTube says, do you think getting Velus Jones more touches on offense will help stretch the defense a bit more, creating more open routes underneath?
I think you can use him in that, and I would like to see that in the offense, but I think the offense is rolling pretty good right now. So I think that guys like Tyler Vaughn's and Michael Pittman stretch the defense as well. I mean, they've both gone and caught deep balls at the same time. So it's just how you want to use, if you want to use that slot receiver to run deep and kind of open up some, the intermediate routes over the middle, which they haven't thrown a ton of, but, those type of routes you can use a guy like Velus Jones as a decoy to an extent, which they've done some with Drake London when he's checked in the game. The first game against Fresno State, usually when subs came in, they were basically decoys. Josh Follow pushes the safety back on the play where he was open, but JT was looking the other way. Drake London ran a route similarly where he's just basically pushing the safeties back. You don't have to have that speed, but once you start attacking with that, that's when you want the speed. If you're just going to use them as decoy, you can use anybody. But once you start attacking and trying to make them respect it a little bit more, that's when you can really pop a ball over the top and get some big chunk yardage.
We got the Eric Tang on Periscope. Wanted to know if BYU is a trap game. We talked about that early on. It's certainly there's potential there, but thanks for the question there, Eric. But go back to the beginning of the show. We did a whole segment on that.
I'm proud of you, Ryan. You're reading Periscope questions.
Shout
Shout out to the Periscope community. We appreciate you.
We like the Periscope
Ryan
peoples.
doesn't. We have a question from Connor on YouTube who says, any update on Ben Griffith's punting? There was a punt in practice this week that Shotgun made a audible like, ooh, that was good. And I was just like, where is this? Where is this in games? Shotgun, what is your take?
He did have a 51-yarder.
True.
But it was low.
That's the thing. He can do different things, so I don't know why they're asking him to try to pooch punt. It seems like they're trying. Well, the first game, he executed the game plan according to John Baxter, and then the second game, his first punt was an attempt to pooch punt inside the 20-yard line. He got it. Technically, it was inside the 20-yard line.
But got to the 20.
It was on the 19.5. So,
Okay.
So technically, it was inside the 20-yard.
But that's not what we've seen from him. He's consistently inside.
It was like
the
33-yarder or so. Why not just kick it if you're going to end up on the 20, why not try to go for the 1-yard line?
Yeah.
Kick it 45, 50 yards, and if it bounces in, okay, you're back at the 20.
Yeah.
It just didn't make sense. I just don't know that they're using him as best as he can be used.
You wonder how much of the coaching aspect is involved. Are you coaching up this kid? Like if you have this thoroughbred that can just run and you're holding him back for whatever reason, like that's the feeling that you get.
Saving him for that Utah game.
Yeah, we'll see.
He is also huge. If you ever did run a fake with him, he could destroy someone.
Yeah. I want to see him
He's
make
used to
some tackles.
contact, but he also ended his Australian Football League career because of concussion, so maybe you don't want to do that.
True. Casey on Facebook says, I've noticed the DBs seem to slip more than usual. Quality teams will take advantage. How has the DB coach approached these issues? This has been a continuous issue for at least 2 years plus. Thanks, guys.
I don't
remember that being.
I do think that the players in general slip a lot on the Coliseum field. I
don't think that's a USC thing necessarily either.
That's why I said players in general.
Or
but
like
I
a
think
DB
the
thing,
field is slippery. Like I've felt it when I'm like on one of the end zones and there's like a moisture to it. So I don't know. It's something that I've always been curious about.
Casey, send us some clips or something. I don't remember like specifically being a DB thing,
but also if anyone's going to slip on the field, it's usually the DBs.
Yeah.
It's the hardest position to maintain your balance because you're guarding someone that can go in any direction basically. So I think slipping with DBs happens. You want to correct that. You don't want that to happen, but missteps can happen. You want to eliminate as many as you can. But I haven't really. It's not something that just like really stood out like it did. I think it was the Rose Bowl, the Penn State game, where it just seemed like everybody was sliding all over the field, and it was like, are they wearing the right cleats or something? Because it just doesn't seem like anyone's got any traction.
Yep. John on YouTube says, will the cheerleaders be back at the basketball games? What is your guess?
Okay, that is what we call low-hanging fruit. Whoever the new athletic director is, when they come in, that's the first thing you do. If you remember when Lane Kiffin got fired and Ed Orgeron was brought in as the interim, what did he do? He opened up practices because Lane Kiffin had closed them to the media for a little while, and he brought cookies back to the training table. So it's just that's what you call low-hanging fruit. All the players are like, yay, cookies. All the media people are like, yay, Orgeron's great. We can go back to practice again. So you say, you know what I'm going to do? The Song Girls, we want you back at the basketball games. Like, what does that cost you? Absolutely nothing. And everyone thinks you're a hero and a genius just for reversing one of the dumbest decisions ever made. And there's been a lot of dumb decisions made by the USC athletic directors.
Someone said it was Song Girls. Yes, the Song Girls. Richard White on YouTube says, any word on a change in Helton's philosophy of no road game walkthroughs on opponent's field?
Haven't heard.
I think we've heard.
Yeah.
I feel like if they were going to make that change, that someone was like, hey, guess what they're doing?
They were, yeah. I think since that's something we have harped on, usually someone like the athletic department or whatever, like someone will send you a message. It'll get to us like, by the way, they're going to be doing walkthroughs. Like, oh, okay. So they know if there's something that we've been kind of critical of or whatever, and they'll usually let you, unless they want to keep it a complete secret. But most of the time, something like that, they would sort of slip it out there and let us know, oh, by the way, USC is going to be doing walkthroughs at LaVell Edwards Stadium. So, but we haven't heard that. So.
Yep. Trojan fan on YouTube says, do you think the refs at practices have contributed to fewer PI calls against our DBs?
I think so. I think having the refs there, you learn what you can get away with, what you can't. You have an opportunity to talk with the referees and say, if I do this or this, and also kind of build that camaraderie, whether that helps you or not. The rapport with the referees that, maybe they really, really like you for some reason, they don't call something that's 50-50. Who knows?
There's more open communication at practice, and that helps. I mean, there's a dialogue there. Yeah, I mean, and I think that gets you used to it. At least you're thinking about it. When you're practicing that way, you want to play like you practice. So if you're practicing thinking about not committing a penalty, I think that helps.
Shotgun, are there any questions that I missed? I know that there were some coming in during calls and whatnot. Any rapid fire that you want to say before we wrap it up here?
Sure. Daniel said, can a head coach be replaced without having to dump all the other coaches? Not unless you're Arizona State. That's the only place I think that's ever happened. When Herm Edwards came in, they basically kept all the coordinators and stuff because usually a head coach wants his own guys.
Yeah.
Why is he going to accept someone else's leftovers? Basically is what's going on.
I think that's a thing of, will you keep Graham Harrell?
Yeah.
And obviously there's so many different factors. This is a little shout out for Keely. LCA Design, who have the tunnel vision clairvoyance from last week, got the closest score predictions. Keely was the only one that got the
I got that one team
true.
would score 20 points.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Keely only got the right team. No, she didn't have the score wasn't close, but at least she got the right team winning.
Yes, that's true. Thank you.
There's been some more JT Daniels slander from Trojan. You were incorrect, saying that the first game that USC's out of plays. I don't know why the broadcasters harped on that. Rod Gilmore is like, they're going to run through the script, and that's going to be it. Like, that's not the air raid offense.
No.
Yeah.
The air raid offense is to adjust to their adjustments constantly. So running a certain script and then being done and out of plays, I didn't understand that storyline at all. But when Fresno State adapted, USC was still moving the ball. They moved the ball every time in the first half, except when they hurt themselves.
Yeah.
So
Drop passes,
JT Daniels looked
like
fine,
that, yeah.
and I thought he would have looked. Ryan and I both agree, whether that's good or bad, because we don't usually agree on everything. But that JT Daniels, if he was in the game against Stanford, he would have had really good numbers as well.
Yeah.
With USC having only 12 plays in offense, does this make them vulnerable later in the season? Or is this just our guys are better than your guys? There's 12 plays, but there's like 7 million combinations off those plays.
It's like Oregon uniforms, you can do it.
Yeah, like if you run a 4 vertical concept with a 4 wide receiver set with 4 verticals, each of those 4 receivers can usually run 3 to 5 different routes based off of it. Based off the defensive play, and that's the biggest question I had going in with Keeton Slovis is how in tune is he with the receivers, whether or not he would throw a ball where a receiver turned one way and he threw it the other way, which is kind of what happened on that Michael Pittman interception in his first, in the second half of that Fresno State game. They were not on the same page.
Yeah.
Pittman ran one way, he threw a different way. So, I think so far we've seen, besides that one play, pretty much every time the throws have been where the receivers have gone. So they're doing a great job of communicating, I think.
Yep. Anything else, Shotgun? I think we covered it pretty much.
Yeah.
You stop highlighting the ones we've done.
Jared said, Ryan, does Tennessee win this week?
Yeah, they're playing with Charleston.
Mocs.
What are they playing?
Chattanooga.
Chattanooga,
The fighting Terrell Owens.
They got to win. I think Bill Connolly, S&P Plus, gave
It's just SP plus.
it's just SP Plus now. They
think so,
changed it. ESPN.
Yeah, still got the
ESPN'd it. Yeah, I think they give them like a 5% chance of losing that game. So they got to get a win. So, but who knows, man?
For your sake, they gotta get a win.
Super OC asked who is the fastest wide receiver in pads for the Trojans. I think it's still Velus Jones.
I would think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
He suggested London. And then someone else asked, what is your opinion on the transfer portal? Just overarching kind of a question.
I think you need to make some modifications and stuff to it. But I like the policy where you can have players transfer. I think you got to give the players more power. They're not getting paid at all. Although they might get paid in California now, which would be interesting.
Interesting development there.
Yeah, but I like it. I think you just need to make a few tweaks, and especially for schools where if you lose players in the transfer portal you should be able to have guys transfer in. Like there's limitations because it's going to hurt players. There's too many guys in the portal. They don't have a destination because schools don't have scholarships left. But if you lost 10 guys from the transfer portal, give them, 5 scholarships back that they can get transferred in or something where you can make up for guys leaving because you have the 25 scholarship limit for the recruiting classes, but that wasn't taken into account. Like a whole bunch of dudes could transfer out. So if you guys go into the portal, I think you should be able to bring some back, not like one for one, but bring some back out of it.
Yeah, and you're seeing, like you said, that there's more guys in the portal than there are spots, and that's led to guys like Keely Ross joining UTEP like a week before the season starts.
Yeah.
There's some there guys are just waiting for opportunities, and maybe I don't know exactly the situation at UTEP, but if in another situation maybe someone gets hurt and you say, okay, I can go in and play there. But if someone doesn't get hurt, you're like, where am I going to play this season?
Right.
Do I sit out another year? That's kind of it's a difficult situation for some of those players to be in if you're not the Justin Fields or the Tate Martells of the world that are really coveted as transfers. So
yeah, the big 5-star guys, or if you have a program like Illinois who actually had a strategy of keeping scholarships open to bring transfers in. There's just not a lot of spots. They got 3 USC guys.
And how has that strategy worked out for them?
It's worked out pretty well. They're 2-0.
And Olawale Batiku Jr. From USC, former 5-star guy, leads the nation right now with 5 sacks and 6.5 tackles for loss. He's also recovered a fumble. Josh Morbebe just had 2 touchdown catches for Illinois in their past game. Trayvon Sidney had a touchdown catch in their first game. So congratulations to those 3 USC guys. Always love to see guys get opportunities to play, and those guys are making the most of it.
Yeah.
We have a couple questions just left on Facebook. Lance said, will JT Daniels travel with the team? I assume he will, ?
That's a big question I have because he was supposed to have his surgery this week. I was told that his ACL surgery would be done, I think, around Wednesday. He was still out at practice Wednesday, so I'm assuming that
he was in a cart like driving around people and stuff.
So maybe it happened Thursday or maybe it was scheduled to do it today. So if that's the case, are you able to travel less than 24 hours later?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
That's going to be hard part.
Yeah,
because the thing is, that's an important question because of how much he helped Keeton Slovis the first game. I mean, was giving him his notes, but also staying with him, being his roommate the night before when the team stayed in the team hotel, basically calming him down on the sideline. Molly McGrath during the game said that when USC had the fumble on the kickoff and they go down 17-3, JT Daniels told him, he said, hey, you need to go over and talk to your offensive lineman and get them rallied back up. And that's what Slovis did, and USC turned things around. So, he played a large part in that, and give him a lot of credit for that because that's not something that is expected, I guess. If you're a starting, especially quarterbacks, because it's the only person that plays, if you're the starter and you lose your spot to somebody, you don't usually see guys go and help out the next guy.
No.
Yeah, apparently Clay Hilton said that he will not be traveling.
Oh.
Said on
Not
Thursday.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
And then John says, I feel like Tyler Vaughns is constantly being disrespected. Agree?
Yes, 100% agree. And wait, how many drops did Tyler Vaughns have in this last game, Shotgun?
0 drops.
Okay, thank you, peoples. And
both of those were pass
back-to-back
breakups.
100-yard games.
The 2 plays that he did not catch were both pass breakups. You got to give DBs credit every once in a while. They didn't get the ball, but they grabbed his arm both times, and you're not going to be able to catch the ball when you only have one hand, and you're planning to catch the ball with 2 hands, and one of them gets yanked away right at the last end. So good job by Paulson Adebo on the second one. He got his hand in and knocked one of his arms away as 2, but both those were pass breakups, not drops. He had 1 drop in the first game. The other 2, one maybe drop and 1 drop. The other one was a pass breakup as well. So there's been 5 balls he hasn't caught.
Yeah.
But
and he has
only 2 of them are
like 250 yards. So,
potentially.
There you go.
I think John knew he was lobbing a softball for
Thank
Ryan
you.
right there.
And he got his first touchdown
Yeah.
to finish the game off.
Very
There
nice.
you go. Alrighty. Any final thoughts? We said our predictions for the game already. Usually we end with that, but I think it was Eric who called in and wanted to know that. So we all are predicting a win for USC. The margin varies between each of us, but I think that's going to wrap it up. Any final thoughts, guys?
John wanted to know, has Lynn Swan now entered the transfer portal?
Yeah.
I think he's just riding off into the sunset. We haven't heard a statement from him. He never talked to the media. I don't think you're going to hear from him for quite a while. It'll be Pat Hayden-esque, where we just never hear from him again.
And he got paid well when he was at USC. So
Yeah.
He's riding off on a pile of money.
He's fine. He should have never got the job to begin with. I don't blame Lynn Swan, but you want to hire a guy that doesn't have any experience, this is what you get. So,
I don't blame him for being hired. You can blame him for a lot of stuff after he was.
Yeah, that's true.
True. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up. We'll be back on Sunday for our recap, our reactions from the game. It'll be me, Ryan, and Taylor May. Shotgun will be still stuck in Provo.
Stuck in Provo?
Okay, sure. He'll be in Provo still.
At a bar somewhere, probably.
He'll be watching.
I'll be watching the Falcons
Careful.
game after I tell you guys. I'll catch you guys on replay.
Wow, sad. Don't catch us on replay, though, if you're watching. Don't do what Shotgun does. But that's going to wrap it up for today's show. That's Shotgun. That's Ryan. I'm Keely. We'll see y'all on Sunday. Bye.
Bye-bye.